Hey, Tony DeWitt here, Missouri Appellate Attorney. I'm retired, and this is not legal advice. Everything I say is simply commenting on the law, and this will be what we're commenting on today. At the outset here, I want to say that this deals with domestic violence. And if you have a domestic violence problem in your life, you may not want to watch this video. But I think you probably should, because I'm going to talk about some resources that may be available and some strategies that might assist you. Today, I want to talk about something that I think is difficult to talk about, but it didn't just arise out of the blue. There have been several things that have triggered my need to talk about this topic. The most recent one of those has been the Melody Ferris trial. The one before that was the Sarah Boone trial. And, of course, there's the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard case from last year. And all of these cases revolve around the subject of domestic violence. And domestic violence is where intimate partners attack one another physically. If you attack your intimate partner physically, you've committed domestic violence. There are criminal penalties for domestic violence. Sometimes it's only a misdemeanor, other times it's a felony, but irrespective of whether it's a misdemeanor or a felony, you're going to lose, if you care about this, you're going to lose your right to possess a firearm. And that's a fairly significant punishment, not to mention the fact that you're flagged in the system as a domestic violence person, and cops are going to treat you differently, even if it's only on a traffic stop. Instead of talking to you and lecturing you about all of these things, I thought what I might do is offer a few suggestions based on both my experience as an attorney, but also my experience as a respiratory therapist, being involved in the emergency room, seeing and treating these people, often the same people, numerous times. And I want to go a little bit further than what most people go into with regard to domestic violence, because I myself have had the attitude in the past that, if I was in a relationship where someone was hitting me, I would get out of that relationship. And that sounds like such an easy answer and such a perfect answer to the situation. But particularly when it involves a male hitting a female, it isn't always that easy, particularly if there are children involved. Many times, a woman will place her safety on the bottom rung, and she will take the abuse in order to protect her children. And particularly if there are financial issues that may be driving some of the abuse, we think, well, just get out of that relationship. But many times, if it's a stay at home mom who hasn't been working, what money is she going to use to set herself up and move out? Many times that just can't happen. So, one of the things that I think is really important, if you have trouble in your relationships, go get some help. Go talk to your pastor. Go talk to your priest. Go talk to somebody who is a psychologist, somebody who does marriage counseling. We're pretty fortunate in our neighborhood to have a pastor, I guess he's a former pastor, who is also very adept at relationship counseling. And I think that, every time I think about that, I think that's such a tremendous ability to have. I am probably not the person to help you in that regard because, again, that's not what I've studied. That's not what I've practiced on. And I find domestic violence, whether it's a woman hitting a man or a man hitting a woman, I find it to be disgusting. The first person to ball up their fist is the person who has run out of ideas. They are emotionally and mentally bankrupt, because if you have to resort to that, then you're essentially willing to destroy the relationship that you have. You're willing you're certainly not acting out of love when you do that, and there is no way out of a situation once you commit this crime. Now, you might get away with it once or twice, but sooner or later, you're going to have to face consequences for that. And I can assure you that the consequences are not going to be good. One of the reasons that I think counseling actually helps is because it provides a way to obtain other coping strategies. And let me give you a suggestion just based on my own experience and also some of my recent experience. We have, over the course of this very weekend, had our grandchildren for a couple of days, and the parents had gone down to Disney World to run in a race. And they like to run, and I think it's great for them to do that. And we wind up taking care of their children while they're off running. My own father-in-law used to say things to the effect that, one boy is a lot of help and two boys is no help at all, and three boys is, a real detriment to getting anything done. And that's often the case when you have three children. There's almost constant squabbling, and it can really drive you kind of crazy. One of the things that I've done is gone to people that I know who are good in this area and said, rather than being driven crazy, what can I do? And I've received some advice that's really helped me. Among the most important of those advices was get up, walk away, look at something else, pull your phone out, read a story on your phone or whatever. Just pull yourself out of the situation and let the noise meter come down inside your brain. And a lot of times when we get into a kerfuffle with our spouse or significant other, we just keep escalating that rhetoric up to the top. And instead of doing that, one of the things that I have found very helpful is to, when I feel like I'm really about to get angry, I will stop and say, okay, what did I do to contribute to this situation? How did I do something that in some way made this situation the one where we're having these angry words? And when I do that kind of thing, I always find that there's something that I've done that I shouldn't have done. And a very simple apology will oftentimes make things right. And even if it doesn't make things right, it at least gives you an opportunity to say something that will be perceived as at least a positive step toward atonement if you're the one who's gone off the reservation. And on the other hand, if your spouse is upset and she's the one who might actually be at fault, or he is the one who might actually be at fault, maybe stopping and saying, I realize I have a piece of this, but have you considered that if you did A, B, or C, that we wouldn't be having this conversation? And you don't do it at high volume. If you find yourself getting angry, lower the tone of your voice. Back up, take a step back, take a deep breath, and try to work through it logically. Because when anger gets in there, it starts sort of roiling those emotions, and pretty soon you're not thinking in a logical manner, you're really kind of thinking in an emotional one. Because of those cases, I thought we really need to talk about this subject. And then the other day, I got a comment on the channel where I had indicated in a previous life when I was a respiratory therapy director that I had somebody who had a domestic violence problem. And we basically had to call her in and say, you need to get your life put back together before you can be a productive and helpful employee here. You can't take care of patients when there are tears dripping down out of your eyes and you're running around with bruises. I think I inelegantly phrased that as tough love, and I probably shouldn't have, because tough love sounds sort of barbaric when you have a woman who is being perhaps abused by someone that she loves. And because you're not in that relationship, you can't possibly understand the dynamic. What we did is we offered solutions. We helped her with resources that could help her and her husband kind of put the situation back together, even though it was very close to being broken. And I think we did her a very big service in that regard. But someone took umbrage at that and made some rather unkind comments to me, which, although I didn't appreciate it, it did at least allow me to stop and think, well, what piece of that do I have? And the piece that I have is just not having expressed myself as eloquently as I probably should have. In the event any of you saw that comment and wondered, what kind of jerk would tell somebody who's being slapped around by her spouse or boyfriend that, their job was on the line if they didn't get help. That really isn't what happened. We called that person in, we had a nice conversation, and all of her the coworkers brought this issue to me. I didn't bring it to them. The coworkers were there for her and helped her understand what they were seeing and the changes that they'd noticed, and it worked out quite well. This is the kind of thing, and in some ways, it really does take a village. Doing the kind and compassionate thing of calling somebody's problem to their attention and asking them to address it, and then offering resources to them to do that is one of the kindest things that you can do. So the other day when I got that comment, I made a video very similar to this one, but I realized when I played it back tonight that it wasn't as kind and compassionate, and it was also very preachy. And I don't really mean to be preachy. There are a lot of legal consequences to committing domestic violence, and if something I said here helps somebody deal with a problem or go get help that they need, then I feel like it's worth talking about this subject. So that's what I have for you today. I know it's different than many of the topics that I cover. If you love somebody, you take care of them. You do not assault them, you don't harm them. The first rule of any good relationship is do no harm. You take and you work for someone else's best interest in pretty much everything you do. As a general rule, I have found that if I'm willing to do 75% of the work in a relationship and my spouse is willing to do 75% of the work in the relationship, that between the two of us, we're both doing about 50% of the work, and it works out pretty good. So that's what I have for you today. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments down below. If you liked this video, please tell me why. And if you didn't like the video, that's probably even more important. Give me some honest feedback. Sometimes I struggle with difficult issues like this, but I feel like somebody needs to talk about it because otherwise it gets swept under the rug. Thanks for listening. And if you have the opportunity today, go out of your way to do a kindness for someone. And then when you've done that, drop any comments down below or email me at the address above. And then come on back down here tomorrow. Join me at the beach. We'll talk about something else. I shouldn't have to say this, but you don't seek legal advice from a guy down at the beach. You seek it from a lawyer in a lawyer's office, where there are people running around in suits and secretaries and all kinds of other people. I'm just a YouTuber. I'm a retired attorney at this point. And although I retain my license to practice in the state of Missouri, I am not here dispensing legal advice. I'm just offering general content on the law. And here are some videos that YouTube thinks you may enjoy.